So, good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending in the region you are here. We have 250 registrations from all continents and for different time zones. Then I want to thank you for participating in the webinar, Learning Everywhere, Education Now and Beyond COVID-19. And I want to thank the speakers of this webinar. We have 5 excellent speakers with us. We have Microsoft. We have Jordan Chrysafidis from Microsoft. Thank you for coming. We have Miguel Nunes from Qualcomm Technologies also. And we have Paul Landers from Ericsson. Thank you for coming too. And Alex Liao, one of our partners, and George Shakoto, another partner. Alex from ECS and George Shakoto from jp.ik. We go to be very, very quick with this. We have planned for 1 hour and 15 minutes, 20 minutes for this webinar. Then we will try to fill the timing. We will cover 6 topics: policy framework architecture, continuity plan, empower remote learning for education, empowering the modern learning environment, facing connectivity challenges for learning and education. We have choose the right device for remote learning and learning everywhere. Then we have a very interesting presentation and speakers. Go directly to the topic of this webinar. I start to introduce the content of the webinar, Learning Everywhere, Education Now and Beyond COVID-19. As everybody knows and agree, here we have a picture, an image which is very famous. Everybody knows this, but we try to apply this to the education system. Then the red line is the line to show the capacity of the education system, and the green line is the line to show the capacity of education system with ICT support, with technologies of education and communication support. Then we can see in this picture, even if we use ICT, the capacity of the education system is not able to face all the requirements and all the needs, although it is a big difference between using the ICT and not using the ICT, and we can feel this during COVID-19 situation, during the situation we are living now. And what we think, or at least from our point of view, is we increase the availability of technologies in education. It means hardware, software, content, and connectivity. The green line will go up and can help to meet the education system to meet all requirements. This is the main message we want to discuss. The second point I want to raise in this webinar is people are very concerned about the situation in these months, in the situation now. But the investments we need to do, we need to go beyond this moment. We need to make investments to face the challenges now, but these investments should be helpful and remain in long term. Then we need a plan, we need a continuity plan for short term, which can be used in the long term. As we see 3 phases. The present crisis, June, July, it starts in March. We see a second phase, relaxing confinement will be during the summer. And then we will see a third phase, the next school year. And the investments we go to do now, we need to be sure in the next school year, we use these investments for the future. Then my opinion and our vision is we need to do investments who can remain for the long term. The last slide I will use is this one, is a slide who show 3 organizations, the World Bank, the UNESCO, and the OECD, and both of them, they have frameworks which can be used to do a continuity plan. They have many points, many aspects to be considered, but we need to discuss them in detail. Here in this webinar, we will have high-level experts who can help to understand, but this discussion should continue for long term. I just want to finalize my presentation to say, in your right side, you can have a section for questions, and you can write questions. We will try to answer them in the end of these presentations. We will try to answer some of the questions. Then please use the questions. You can write them. Maybe you will be answered by one of the speakers, or maybe we will answer live in the end of the third part of this webinar. Then, with no further ado, we'll invite Jordan Chrysafadis from Microsoft to continue this discussion and to make his presentation. Thank you for participating.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Mario. Hello, everyone. As Mario said, I'm Jordan Chrysafadis. I work for Microsoft Corporation, and I'm responsible for our education devices business worldwide. It's a real pleasure to be here, depending on where you are, morning, afternoon, or evening. And I look forward to the discussion, frankly, and I have just a couple of slides that I'd like to share with you just about some of the areas of focus that Microsoft has put on remote learning, not just in this time of COVID, but really starting in response to the demands of the marketplace, which started many, many years ago. If I could get my first slide, please. And one more would be great. I think, you know, it's very important to sort of start from a grounding of how we think about education, what our corporate mission is at Microsoft. You may have heard our CEO talk about it, but it's really around empowering every organization and every individual on the planet to achieve more. And never more could this be true than right now. If we think about a time when people are worried about food or even basic survival, the folks that are most at risk are those that are having difficulty connecting into school, potentially even utilizing the tools that exist in the most optimal environment. Now you add in a scenario where you have a significant amount of the population that may have challenges either with connectivity or technology, as well as educators and leaders who don't understand how to be able to utilize this technology, and it becomes very compounding. As a result, we've really focused on 3 key areas at Microsoft. The first one is around enabling inclusive learning, not just in school, but also in a remote environment. So those students that have potentially trouble learning how to read or do math, how do you help them when you can't be right beside them? The second piece is around empowering instructors and IT staff, and how do they support utilizing those tools that establish that connection. My sister happens to be a teacher, and I get to talk to her firsthand on a daily basis about some of the challenges she has in her classroom, and also, of course, being informed by our customers and our partners around the world. And then lastly, how do you foster that ongoing engagement? I think it's obvious that you want to have engagement between the teacher and the classroom, but in many cases, we're seeing that need for parents as well. Parents are playing a critical role, in some cases a reluctant role of being a teacher at home. And how do you foster that ongoing engagement to keep building the community and making sure that the efforts we're undertaking are effective? If I could get the next slide. So from a Microsoft perspective, and we'll talk about this a little bit more through the course of the webcast, we've really vectored a lot of our efforts about making sure that we provide those tools in a low-cost or no-cost way that integrate with all the existing investments that our customers have made. We think it's really important to really make the most of all those investments. We know that remote learning and distance learning has been something that's been in the works for a period of time. But all the institutions I talk to say that COVID has really just accelerated what they were already doing. And so having great products like Teams or Zoom, Canvas or Moodle, Office 365, we're trying to make sure that we can incorporate all those investments going forward. And of course, all this needs to be built on a foundation of security, compliance, and compatibility. We've seen some stumbles in the marketplace around security as it relates to student privacy. This is top of the list for us at Microsoft, and it's an area where we've invested a tremendous amount to make sure we have the most secure platform to enable remote learning on an ongoing basis. If I can get the next slide. So this is my last slide. I want to reiterate and really just make our commitment to you that we're here providing the tools. You can go to Microsoft.com/remote learning and see a whole host of free tools, starting with Office 365, Teams, and training that we have available for students, leaders, teachers, and even parents. The second piece is we have ongoing 24/7 support. We know that you might run into a problem at any point in time, and we're making that available around the clock. And then lastly, I think there's an expectation that Microsoft really contribute at a worldwide level. And we've lent our technical support and engineering to UNESCO on their emergency task force to make sure that we're going to the worldwide hotspots and enabling not only educators, but also healthcare professionals to utilize this technology to help solve this crisis. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Miguel Nunez from Qualcomm, who's going to pick up with the next slides. Thank you.
Mute button. Thank you so much, Jordan. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm very happy to be here as part of this, great cause trying to help in the education. My name is Miguel Nunes. I am in the product team at Qualcomm, looking after the compute products. If we can get a next slide. So as an introduction, I know some of you may have heard of Qualcomm. Some people don't know Qualcomm. Who are we? Qualcomm is a global leader in wireless innovation. We've been building wireless products and inventing wireless products and standards for a very long time. We have over 30 years of innovation, a lot of R&D, and our businesses are expanding to other areas. We've been very heavily mobile phone focused. There's probably a lot of you who have Qualcomm-based mobile phones today, and we are starting to expand into other areas. As wireless becomes more pervasive, it's basically become the communication fabric of the world. And I just wanted to sort of tell everybody a little bit who we are so you understand how we're starting to get involved in this segment as well. Next slide, please. A little bit of history. At Qualcomm, we invent these breakthrough technologies that transform how the world connects, computes, and communicates. And we've done this for over 30 years. We've led the mobile industry into the digital age. So data has become a very pervasive technology in mobile phones. We've connected the smartphone to the internet. We've put a mobile computer in everybody's pocket. And now we're taking this technology to other devices, including PCs. We're the world's leader in wireless technology and driving force behind a lot of developments and expansions of 5G as well. And we believe that 5G, even in the future, is going to bring even more capabilities and connectivity to a broader range of products, including PCs, including a lot of benefits to, we believe, the education environment. Let's play a quick video.
About 12 million U.S. children fall into the homework gap, the barrier students without internet access face when learning remotely. And around the world, more than 1 billion students lack adequate connectivity. Qualcomm Technologies is working to close the homework gap, empowering students and educators to learn and teach from virtually anywhere with always connected PCs powered by Qualcomm Snapdragon compute platforms, built to provide secure, lightning-fast cellular and Wi-Fi connectivity. Snapdragon powers productivity tools that enable real-time, multi-person collaboration, immersive video, and virtual classrooms for modern, untethered education. So while today's learning environment is rapidly changing, Qualcomm Snapdragon is powering mobile PCs that are as connected as your smartphone with 5G and battery life that can last for days, expanding the freedom to learn and teach from virtually anywhere.
Thank you. And so that's a brief education about what our products are doing and how we're bringing some of this technology. So one of the things we're doing, partnering with Microsoft and other folks in the industry, jp.ik, ECS, is to bring an untethered education experience. So we're introducing our Snapdragon always on, always connected PCs. And what are our products bringing? We bring in these fast, seamless LTE or Wi-Fi connectivity to a broad range of devices and price points. You know, one of the things that a lot of people have is as you saw in the video, is computing. Computing without connectivity brings a lot of challenges, whether you're in the commercial space, education space, or even your personal consumer space. Another great aspect of our platform that we're trying to solve some problems in industry today is just multi-day battery life. When you have connectivity, you need power to be able to, use your device all day long, really teach all day long. And with that, with wireless technologies comes enterprise-grade security so that you can keep your data secure no matter where you are, modern device management, integrating with tools from Microsoft and other, ISVs in the industry that specialize in this, bringing this immersive virtual classroom with great camera technologies, AI technologies, and really you can connect, create, and collaborate from virtually anywhere. So bringing the best of your smartphone to the PC, allowing people to bring those technologies that help innovate and create a lot of differentiation in the smartphone and use your smartphone education, bringing all those technologies to your PC to enable an immersive virtual classroom experience and help close the homework gap with connectivity. Thank you, and I'd like to introduce Paul Anders from Ericsson.
Good to be here, and thanks, Miguel, for the introduction there. And I think it's maybe a good segue, actually, from what Miguel spoke about and what Qualcomm does in terms of the devices and LTE 5G compatibility at the device level and the efforts to bring that into the hands of teachers and school children around the world. Of course, what you need to make that happen then is connectivity. And that's a little bit the theme then of what I'm going to talk about over the next few minutes, about taking a view on the I would say the coverage that's available today worldwide, and then also the usage that's available worldwide, because they are two themes that we see quite often and are sometimes misunderstood. So I think it's often important just to put things into a little bit of context when we talk about connectivity itself, and then look at some of the reasons then why people are actually not connected, why they're not using available connectivity in many cases. But just before I jump into that, just a quick word about Ericsson. We're a business-to-business company, so we're not so well known on the consumer side. And typically our customer base is consumer service, communication service providers, mobile network operators, for example. So whoever you buy maybe your device from or your subscription from, whatever operator that might be, would typically be our customer. And then we would supply them with the network connectivity solutions to make the networks work, basically. That's the core part of our business. So very much into the radio part and 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and whatever G will come next after that as well. But just moving, thank you. Let's take a look at some of the numbers that are out there today when it comes to connectivity, because I think, again, this is what I was alluding to. There is sometimes confusion about these numbers. What we do see, and this is reliable data that we produce, and I would advise anybody to look at on our webpage, the Ericsson webpage, at the mobility report, one recently released at the start of June, about some of the statistics that are out there, where 4G population coverage, as opposed to geographic coverage, population coverage was about 80% of the population of the world at the end of last year, 4G connectivity. We expect that to reach, on current trends, over 90% of the world's population by 2025. So not everybody, but 90% of the world's population. We see that 4G networks themselves are always getting faster, greater capacity, higher speeds, using the great chips and the Snapdragon processors, etc., from Qualcomm. And more importantly, we see this huge expansion in 5G. And from a low base, obviously, in 2019, and we expect 65% of population coverage of 5G by 2025. However, we know at the same time, and we see these statistics ourselves, they align with what other bodies like the ITU suggest, that approximately 40%, maybe a little bit more even, of the world's population are unconnected. So then you have these two, opposing numbers, if you like. You've like up to 90% of people having 4G connectivity around them, but then you have 40% of the population are still unconnected. So obviously there's a big usage gap. Our point would be that the usage gap is not necessarily a technology question. The technology is out there. It can always be refined and tuned and things done to it, etc., to make it more available, but effectively, the main barrier to this lack of connectivity, and this has been very highlighted in COVID times with so many kids at home. I read an article in the Guardian newspaper about in the UK where up to 1 million kids or more are unconnected in their homes. But they're probably living in areas that tends to be more to do with local finances, home finances. There can be age and gender barriers as well. And other barriers, even electricity can be a barrier in many cases. And then there are challenges when you try to reach the very last unconnected parts of the population, in terms of business models, etc. But our argument would be that their technology and spectrum are not barriers per se. The mobile technology is proven. It has the economies of scale. There is, an onus on regulators and policymakers maybe to be more proactive, to looking at how universal service funds are managed, etc. And just for my last slide, I would highlight this initiative that Ericsson is very much involved in, the Giga initiative. For those of you that are not aware of it, I would go to this website and check it out. I think it's having been involved in this area of school connectivity for many years, I think this is the most promising initiative on a global level to really tackle the issue of school connectivity and get over these barriers of financing, etc., to make things happen and connect schools and the communities around schools. So I've probably consumed my time, so I'll pass over then to Alex from ECS.
I'm here very glad to present ECS as a device manufacturer for education. Yep. So I think that I'm Alex. So I present the VP of ECS at headquarters and also the GM of ECS USA. I've been in this education field for like 10 years. So when you think about the ECS, we are kind of a leading manufacturer and the suppliers of the several computer devices in the industrial. So we have for the education, I think we have a 10 years experience deployment on the education devices. And then we have 26 million more of the devices for education in the field right now. And look on the devices. Actually, we have a lot of professors here. We have the teachers here. We have a lot of government officials here. So again, when we see the COVID-19, we see the impact of COVID-19. Everyone talk about the remote learning, etc. And then one of the very important factors is the devices. And then, of course, before you choose your devices, you need to identify what will be the right requirement for we to deploy in the school. So here's several questions. We are thinking, okay, do you really carry your devices? And then are you using the keyboard, or are you using the touchpad, or even the touch panel? And then one of the key important factor is also the video conference, because think about the teachers, think about the students, they don't use that much video conference compared before the COVID-19. And then we all know that video conferencing will take a lot of power, and also, of course, also the bandwidth. So that's why video conference is a kind of key factor already hot up in the future. And also, since people are using more and more devices at home, on the more application at home, so the computing power is also one of the key factors that when you choose devices. And of course, again, because a lot of legendary application will be running by the fresh application, so this is also the key factors before you choose the devices. And here I also mentioned about different applications. So think about the different application from the computing power. So we starting with a basic like the content access and video conferencing, web applications, and of course that would be the basic. So for this kind of application, I think the basic entry level or good performance of the CPU power, that would be good enough. But if you talk about the secondary school or university, what about the programming, coding, or the content creation, and then you probably will need a better performance on the CPU. And of course, if you want to do more kind of the data sciences, modeling, or AI machine learning, and then you probably need the best of the performance. So this is how, before you decide what kind of devices fit to the students and the teachers, this is something that you need to think about it. And of course, our technology, after the COVID-19, the blended learning, I don't think that blended learning is a good name, but I would say that hybrid or blended is the name that we are talking now. So actually, we are mixed two kind of the learning experience. One is face-to-face learning in the school, in the classroom. This is what has been done already for years. And then one is a more kind of learning ways, online learning or remote learning. So we believe that in the future, or it's even by now after the COVID-19, during the COVID-19, the blended learning will be more important, obviously to all the student teachers. So when you see the face-to-face learning, in the past, we are talking about devices need to be reliable, IP rating, a kind of the fairness design, or the better connectivity, long battery life. This is what has been already happened in the past. But think about the online learning, we need to see more the good camera, and then we need to have the better screen, because we need right now in the future. And also, we also need a very good as a digital microphone to make sure that the noise level was reduced. So this is really a kind of complex model, we think that will be something what's going to happen in the future. So ECS here is to provide a full range of the education PC, from the notebooks for the teachers and for students, for the university, and also the hybrid 2-in-1 notebooks from 10-inch, 14-inch, and of course the tablet. So I think we don't want to discuss a lot of devices here. But again, with the devices, but without the good implementation, probably is also the useless. So here I want to introduce the next speaker, jp.ik, George Segudo from jp.ik. JP has been a very good partner together with us, Qualcomm, and also the Microsoft on the project worldwide. And then here we also want to invite George as a speaker to talk about the implementation of the devices and solutions that would be part of the example to show that how we are engaged with different partners on the education project. And George.
Thank you, Alex. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mario, for inviting jp.ik. I'm Jorge Sacoto. I'm the chairman of jp.ik. And I will tell you a little story about what happened 12 years ago. 12 years ago, there was a small country in the world that decided that education was not only in the classroom. The education was every day, every hour. And then they decide to do a project giving connectivity and devices to all the students and teachers, a platform, and also content. And 12 years ago, there was no pandemic, but they did it. Okay? Then after that, jp.ik was born. JP is a company that's 30 years, but after that, we create jp.ik to not only work in Portugal markets, but also to go abroad and work in several countries and teaching them how they can do projects that can have a big impact. Our professionalism is offering a personalized offer, okay, a special design computers for education. We also have a team that is a pedagogical team that do the research and development of the things to know how to do the solution. And of course, a full range of education services. And we have done almost 20 turnkey projects in the world. There's some examples only that countries that we are working now. And we face some challenges, of course. 12 years ago, we launched the project with 3G. Today is different, but some countries, we know the lack of connectivity that they have, the solution they have to wait to meet for them. And we know that is a challenge, but when there is a will, when there is a big will, we always can do it. Then there are some reasons like Kenya, Ivory Coast, Angola, Uruguay and Bolivia, and so many others, but only to give you an idea what is jp.ik at this moment. What we have learned, this learning is everywhere, and we have our main pillars to make it successful. Okay, one of the things that is important, of course, is the policy and leadership of the country. Of course, what is the blueprint of the technology also? What is the model that we use in terms of teaching and learning? What are the new models in terms of intelligent environments? And of course, how we can deploy and do the technical support. These kind of projects, normally, they have big impact. They have, of course, educational impact, a political impact, a social impact, and also economic impact. Going more deeper in terms of the home learning solution, that we have that solution not only today, but we had in the past. We can see that social, driving the communities, engaging the fathers, engaging also the teachers, is one of the things that is really important, and also in the involvement of the families. Also giving some values to the local community. They know their culture, they know how to do their content, they have to be interventive in this process. Of course, we also have always the political thing that is important. The political is the most important thing, how to define the political way to go to a new country. Then for us, is always been very grateful to work with some countries that they have the feeling and they have the way to get that people with more skills. Of course, the technological part, and here we have most of them, we are technological companies, but if you want to work in education, we have to know and we have to see what are the drivers to change the education. Right now, what we have is a pandemic situation, and we know that it is a challenge, but we have been prepared since many years, and we know how to manage. From the other side, we see that normally the government, the politicians, they are very slow, but in these cases, they have to be very fast. Otherwise, we lose time, and we will lose our children. Also, one thing that is very important is when there is a project in a country, the economic side is very important. Then to pass the know-how to the country, to do job creation in the country, of course, this is the important thing. And if we see right now what is happening, there will be a new reindustrialization of a lot of countries, because they already understand that the most important thing that we have in the country is our know-how. Then one thing that we are doing now is to help the countries to have new skills and for them to can go step by step for their goals. And last but not the least, this is our footprint since 12 years ago, and we think we'll have more in the future. Then we've reached already 16 million kids, not only kids, students, primary, secondary school, and we reached 300K teachers. We have in the world 20 large-scale projects. We already have implemented more than 100,000 schools, and we have been in 70 countries. And that's all for me. Thank you very much for listeners. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, George, and thank you all the speakers. Now it's really a good overview of the situation from these 5 companies, but now I think will come a little bit tougher moment where we have here some questions to have some feedback from our speakers before we give the attendees the chance to do also the questions. And I really encourage all the attendees to use the questions in the chat. Next to the chat, there is the questions section, and you can use them to make the questions in the questions. I see some questions in the chat, but you can also use the questions which we can answer more quickly. Then the first question, it's about what kind of advice? Can you share 2 pieces of advice for the teachers who are struggling to make this transition in the middle of the school year? I know we don't have much time, then I kindly ask people to answer very quick, like 30 seconds. And I invite now Microsoft, the first answer. I will pick different speakers for different questions.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Mario. I mean, I would say to some degree that question is probably, I don't want to say outdated, but I think teachers are living with this already, and it is past the middle of the school year. I think there's a couple of things that come to mind. First off, there's only so much change you can absorb in a school, and I think it's very important for teachers who do not do this every day to use what's familiar to you. What are the tools that you're using? What are the tools that your kids are using? And continue with that as much as possible. I think the second thing that's true is that when we go back to school, and you talked about this notion of the sort of the confined break that's happening right now. When we go back to school, there are going to be students that will still be sick, and there will be still students that will be remote learning, and schools may be at 50% capacity or some type of blended or hybrid learning. And I think that is something that really forces this notion of take the time, reflect on what was working and what wasn't working, and then what kind of training and support do you need as a teacher or as an administrator to be able to make that time effective. I think those are the 2 things that I would recommend.
Hello, George. I think you are muted. George, you are muted. Thank you. 2 pieces of advices for teachers, please.
Yeah. Okay. Considering this moment, I would say to the teachers, first, to keep cool, and second, they know what to do. Okay. In the times like this, we all have reserves inside that we know what to do in the meanwhile. Okay. Then what I will say is, first, ask for the tools that we have to have now. If you don't have, you have to ask, okay? And second, don't be afraid. We'll solve it.
Okay. Second question. since COVID-19 outbreak, what was your company been doing to support educational community, special to implement remote learning? Microsoft, Jordan, please. First and after ECF.
All right, thanks, Mario. I mean, there's a couple things. I think there's the what you see, and then there's what you don't see that we've been working on. I mean, I think what you see, most specifically, is the provision of tools and training and support. And I think, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, at Microsoft.com/remote learning, and I'll put the URL in the chat so people can go to it in a moment. You'll see a whole set of resources and tools, training for teachers, leaders, and even parents. The other piece, which has been kind of fun, is we've actually been supporting quite a group of virtual graduations as students are graduating either from high school or even university. And we've seen some very, very creative solutions using things like Minecraft, etc. We're, of course, providing free access to Teams, which is our collaboration software which supports remote learning, as well as Office 365. And from a productivity perspective, when students graduate, that is the product they'll be using when they graduate. So it makes sense to be using that in school. And then lastly, we have a whole host of great resources like Minecraft, Flipgrid, MakeCode, which are all freely available. And there are over 500 lesson plans, as an example, freely available online for things like Minecraft. My sister, who's a teacher, said it's the only homework she never needs to remind her students to do. It's always done on time. The other piece, which we're very proud of, is the work you can't see. And that's just been the adoption and support of all of this great influx of teachers and students utilizing the technology. As I mentioned, Teams as the collaboration platform has undergone 1,500% growth in the last 8 weeks. There are over 55 million students utilizing Teams each and every day. And what's been amazing for us, of course, is that with our technology partners, we have to build out the data centers, et cetera. As you can imagine, a company like Microsoft has a long-term plan around infrastructure build out. The Teams infrastructure 2-year plan was implemented in 1 month. And so, my thanks go out to the technology partners that you see here on the webcast, because we work together to be able to deliver those solutions to your students and to your institutions. And part of what happened and what's been able to support this move to remote learning has been the great cross-industry collaboration, unlike anything I've ever seen before. So I think, from our perspective, there's a lot going on. Some of it you see and some of it you don't.
Thank you. I'm using Teams 300 times more. Then I double the growth average in the world.
Awesome.
Then,
we appreciate the support.
Alex, please.
Yeah. Okay. So as a device manufacturer, actually, we provide a kind of the pilot run or PLC in quantity to support the country that they especially leg out connectivities. For example, we has been working with Qualcomm for years and then try to bring the connectivity into devices which cost effective. So for these kind of devices, now we are supporting to some of the rural countries and some of the country who has leg out the connectivity and the fixed network to the school to demonstrate that how our devices can work with Qualcomm and Ericsson and kind of better backup to the leg out the connectivities. So again, here I see a lot of questions here, and then people are talking about the equality of education, and yeah, that's important because first you need to have a teacher who is familiar with the devices, and then this is something that we hope that jp.ik or Microsoft can really help to training the teachers, to provide the teachers curriculum to see that how teachers can familiar with the digital contents. And then from ECS, I think we are providing devices with connectivities, which can help the education connectivity to overcome the impact of the COVID-19.
Thank you. About connectivity, the next question. What are the 2 biggest challenges considering remote learning or distance learning? and what we need to do to overcome these odds or these difficulties. I start by Ericsson and after Qualcomm to answer this question. Please, Paul, please, Miguel.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Great question. To me, as I said when I was speaking a little bit earlier, that I don't see the challenge being a technology challenge. I mean, I think we see that from the quality of the connections that are out there. I mean, there are always some things that can be improved, and everyone is always working to improve them. But the challenge isn't a technological one per se. To me, what we're seeing now in the current situation, is a lack of investment in education going back many years, a lack of investment in teacher training, bringing teachers up to skills, up to date with modern digital skills. The overload and overburden teachers that just doesn't allow enough time in the day to actually work with technology. So I think we're seeing the repercussions of these issues really hitting us face on, and I think that's where the focus has to be going forward with initiatives like GIGA, that gather the right kind of funding together. But you could have the best connected school in the world, you could have the best devices in the school and in the homes of the kids, but maybe they're not being used. So you have to always look at the other factors, and to me, one of the biggest factors is the lack of training that teachers have had. Mm-hmm. Okay. So maybe over to Qualcomm.
Miguel.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, connectivity has always been a need in the world, and I think you'll see from COVID-19 has put a spotlight on this gap. And one of the things we've been doing as a company is how do we bring some of these experiences that you would find typically in higher price point devices, more premium devices, and bring those experiences down to more entry level, affordable price points. And as Paul showed earlier, connectivity wireless connectivity is pervasive. It is in more places than even power. And getting access to that connectivity is going to enable you to deliver education virtually anywhere, whether it's at school, at home. And I know a few speakers mentioned earlier, education is everywhere, not just at school, it's at home. And having that constant access to connectivity is key. And we think that LTE provides great connectivity, and in the future 5G is even going to transform that even more with greater bandwidth, lower latency, bringing these real life experiences. Video conferencing has become so key, so good quality cameras. Things that we thought were premium experiences are now experiences that everybody needs across all price points, at all segments, and all tiers.
Okay, thank you. Well, now I agree with everything is said, but that's why we have this next question. That's good. When we talk about bringing technology to education experience, and especially in this kind of time, what kind of solutions we can have? Please, JP, and after Microsoft. Then George and Jordan. Solutions, very short because we have time scheduled, but solutions.
Yeah, thank you, Mario. Of course, there is a lot of solutions. I will not talk about a specific solution, but I will say that solutions that can enhance the collaboration and also the teamwork are very important. We have our own solutions, and Microsoft is really specialist on this. And I think together we can really work in a framework that answers to this kind of questions.
Okay, Microsoft.
Yeah, thanks, George. I think there's a couple things that come to mind. First and foremost, as I think, I said in the opening, I think this connection and building community, particularly connection of the school and teacher to the students, and then also to the parents are very important. It does put a premium on video and video engagement, as evidenced by the very fact that we're here today. The work and I think the decisions that will be made around good cameras in devices, good microphones in devices really just become that much more important. I also think that the ability to sort of replicate what would have been whiteboard time, so the teacher being able to engage with either the class or the individual from a technology standpoint and replicating what the whiteboard can, but then also remaining available and engaged with the student when they raise their hand. So this notion of the individualized support, even when you're in a class setting, takes on enhanced importance here, especially when you think about this notion of inclusivity, because everybody's learning at a different rate. And as a result, that the ability to use the technology, I think, are the ones that we've seen really pop to the top. For us, I mean, just practically speaking, when COVID first hit, we did not have a raise your hand feature within Teams. The engineering team quickly identified that that was necessary and slipstreamed it into the product. So one night you went to bed and it wasn't there, and you woke up in the morning and now students could raise their hand. And so I think that kind of learning that we've been able to quickly incorporate, I can talk about several others, and I think hopefully we'll have time to later, where we have been learning from how to not only create that connection, but also deliver that individualized learning. I think that those are sort of the key factors you want to look for in any solution, either Microsoft or other companies.
Okay, moving forward, what can the parents do, especially if the teachers cannot spend all day in virtual instruction, in synchronous sessions? What can be the role of the parents, and how the parents can help, especially in remote learning, to engage the kids? Can we have answer from ECS first and after GP? Because you have experience in the projects too.
Yeah, I think for parents, especially for me, is also well, because my kids was here, and then we have remote learning from March until now. And then actually the homeschooling for the parents is really a challenge, because first we work at home, so we need to have the one devices already, and then the kids probably have another devices, and my wife had another devices. So we have all the devices here. And then how to utilize devices will be really the challenges. And then really, I mean, as a parents, we spend a lot of time to work with kids, and then also spend much more time on the learning. So the efficiency of the efficiency of the learning will be really challenged at home. And to be honest, I don't know how much I can help my parents, but I really want, I mean, as a parent, we want to have the teacher, but in the end, I find that what I can share teacher was pretty much less. Teachers still played a very good role about remote learning. But here, I also want to put a question, if we have time to Jordan this, for example, I also see different questions, how the teacher can do the benchmark, how teacher can do a different kind of remote learning, and we will talk this later, but really, parents play an important role, but to be honest, I really don't know how much parents that can help the teachers.
Okay, JP, yeah. George.
Yes, thank you, Mario. First thing that I want to say is, in these times, a lot of parents, they discover they have sons, and they are at home with them, and they are helping them for the first time. And this is one of the things that are good, that is the family reunion. But when you think about this, we think that there is a lot of possibilities now to create new tools for the parents, not right now, but in the future, and to be more together with the kids to follow their studies.
Okay. The next question, I think there is a very important, my background is philosophy, then there is a very important saying is, technology is a tool, but is not neutral. It means if you use different type of technologies, the actions you do are different. Then we used to say technology is a tool, but it's not neutral. That's very important, I think. Then now the next question is, what kind of solutions in technology we can have to help to mitigate the present situation, especially in what concerns the connectivity? And I will ask Ericsson and Qualcomm to help us to understand what kind of solutions you provide now for this purpose?
Okay, yeah, I can maybe start then, Paul, here from Ericsson again. Yeah, I think, as I pointed out earlier, connectivity is pervasive for sure, but not maybe always optimized. If we take schools, and I understand, of course, that many schools are closed at the moment, but if we still look at the example of schools, we see that connectivity is not often optimized for schools. So one of the solutions that we have brought forward that fits perfectly well with the kind of case of school, fixed wireless access, or FWA, which is, guarantees a good quality of service that's necessary for a school. And then you can have different quality of service depending on the size of the school and the scale of the school, the number of teachers, number of students, etc. But guarantees a good quality of service with the right kind of latency, the right download, downlink, uplink speeds for a school to function properly from a digital perspective. So it's based on the same technology as the subscriptions we have with our phones. It's not about creating a hotspot on this or a tethering kind of solution like that, but it's a much more robust solution with a specific CPE, customer premise equipment, that's installed at the school, perhaps with an outdoor antenna that even improves the signal quality. So we find that those solutions work really well with schools. They work really well with other kinds of institutions, small to medium-sized enterprises and homes as well. So we see that as an evolution on the network.
Okay.
As one example.
Thank you. Miguel from Qualcomm.
Thank you. Yeah, Qualcomm has a wireless reach program that's helping different countries, in various education programs. In addition to that, from a product, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things we're doing is trying to bring those premium type experiences with, as Jordan mentioned quite a few of those earlier, great cameras, great microphones, thin and light, fanless devices, things that stay cool. Bringing all those things that people have come to love from their phone into their PCs and enabling, enable teachers and parents and kids and everybody to connect from everywhere, whether it's LTE today that offers hundreds and gigabits of speeds to 5G in the future, which is going to offer multi-gigabits of speeds and really change where you learn. Learning is from virtually anywhere once you connect it. Who doesn't want a PC that's connected all the time and lasts all day?
Yes. Yes, of course. Talking about that, let's move. Now, another question. Examples. Bringing meaningful technology into education has been a hot topic for years, but now we can maybe have some examples. Please, Microsoft, Jordan, and after jp.ik, very quick, but examples we can show or you can identify as front runners in this process.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think this notion of infusing technology into the classroom is only a means to the end. And I don't think that's new. What I do think, though, is we've crossed that precipice. Like, rather than it sort of being something that, are we going to do it or are we going to invest? Even the holdouts that you see around the world, sort of Japan and Germany, et cetera, have government mandates that, bringing technology into the classroom can enhance that experience and really enable everyone to get the most out of their educational career. Obviously, first and foremost, there's a reason why it's called a personal computer. It's a very personal connection to the technology. Certainly the phone and tablet play an incredible role in terms of both mobility as well as access. More people start their technology journey with a phone than any other technology. And so I think it's incredible to think about the opportunities there. I do think a couple of very interesting examples that I've seen more recently is just how the collaboration technology has evolved so quickly. So for example, when we first sort of started COVID happening, you saw different technologies really sort of create the classroom. You had a scenario where you had disruptive students who would start the class early and start very disruptive. The ability to very quickly create a lobby so that students can't start a meeting without a teacher, that a teacher can enforce the mute if necessary on a particular student or the class, really talks about how the technology so quickly evolved to be able to make online learning more effective, I guess is the right word, and really quickly evolve how a teacher who might not use technology or might not have been an expert all of a sudden be able to deliver their lessons in a more effective way, and then of course tailor their lessons for students as they needed to. So having things like approved presenters or making the defaults easier to set, all those types of things that we've seen kind of creep into the online education world very, very quickly. And I think it's just made the whole prospect more palatable and more adoptable.
Okay, thank you. This is the time we have for the questions. Unfortunately we have more questions, but we don't. We have no much time to do that questions anymore. And with your consent, I will move to the last question, special related to the bandwidth and an experience related to the bandwidth and the management of the software. I will put a video of our project in Argentina, and after I will help to translate, because the question is recorded, pre-recorded, and is in Spanish. Please put the video, because we have to have few time to the questions of the participants.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Un saludo a todos. Mi nombre es Nicolás Parola, yo soy gerente del Plan Sarmiento de la Ciudad de Buenos Aires. Somos un programa que repartió ya más de 200.000 equipos en estos últimos años. Y quería consultarles, porque un problema que tenemos es que esos 200.000 equipos que están distribuidos en las escuelas, cuando intentan actualizarse, tanto actualizaciones de Windows, de Office y de las aplicaciones que desplegamos vía Intune, sobrecargan mucho el ancho de banda. Y consume demasiado y deja poco espacio para el uso de las aplicaciones educativas. Más ahora quizás cuando volvamos a las clases va a generarse un colapso, porque probablemente muchos equipos no se estén usando, y cuando vuelvan a las aulas van a aprenderse y van a tener muchas actualizaciones acumuladas. Nosotros tenemos un esquema que está basado 100% en Internet. No tenemos hardware intermedio, o sea, no tenemos ni servidores ni dispositivos de almacenamiento en las escuelas. Las escuelas salen directamente a Internet, y nos interesaría buscar algún método que nos permita disminuir o hacer más eficiente el uso del ancho de banda para las actualizaciones Windows, Office y aquellas aplicaciones que se despliegan vía Intune. Esa es la pregunta. Bueno, agradezco si me pueden dar respuesta y muchas gracias por este espacio.
General Manager for Plan Sarmiento of the Ministry of Education of Buenos Aires, and this is a big problem in a wide scale, is how to update, because the connectivity problem, managing all the connections. I don't know who is willing to answer this question, or maybe more than one participant. Very quick answers, please, because we have time very, very limited.
Well, I feel like that question was somewhat directed to me. So
not only.
Perhaps I'll start. First off, let me say thank you for being a customer of ours. That is, we very much appreciate the support, and we're here to support you. I think there are several techniques that I've seen very effective. First off, there is a technology called autopilot, which allows devices to be configured at factory. Our partners at jp.ik and ECS work very closely with us to make sure that devices are delivered where they are pre-configured, and in many cases have the image on them when they're delivered. And if you think about a scenario with COVID-19 where devices are delivered to the home, all a student needs to do is log on once at home, and any updates that happen there. So when they do show up at school, there's no bandwidth connected whatsoever. So that's an important piece. The second piece is that the current version of Windows, which is specifically built for education, is very, very lightweight. It's important that you use the education version of Windows Pro so that it doesn't have all the ancillary applications that may not need updating. So that's sort of the first thing. And then the second thing is that version of Windows actually has AI built into it so that it does not do updates during the school day. And so definitely there's some bandwidth that will be consumed, but it's much easier to do it when it's not an active school situation, and these machines will update either in a charging cart or at home in the off hours, and the AI automatically detects when that will happen. And then lastly, of course, as an administrator, you can choose what updates and what doesn't. My recommendation from a security perspective is take all those updates. But if you don't necessarily need the latest templates from Office, that's something that's your choice as an administrator, and you can really tune or even completely turn off updates if that is your choice as an administrator.
Okay, thank you. Any more question? Because the question is beyond Microsoft, is the connectivity, is the infrastructure. Somebody else want to help?
Yeah, I mean, I can try from a technology standpoint. I think you will see as technology evolves, the amount of bandwidth, at least when you look at LTE connections, the amount of bandwidth, and even in the future 5G, is you'll have so much bandwidth and so much distributed capacity that a lot of those bottlenecks will start to erode with technology enhancements. Hopefully in the future, with all of these capabilities, bandwidth will not be a problem anymore.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any more questions? Any more answers?
So, number I have here, to solve the question about the Nicholas, I think we and jp.ik, we has been working the devices like the classroom access point, which is able to, share or reduce the bandwidth of internet. So that means when you have a kind of content access point in the school, and then if we do a dry application or implementation, and the auto update may go from the contents of the access point if we set up going to the really internet connection. So it will not solve 100% of the problem, but it will reduce the bandwidth consumption.
Okay. We have to go to the end of the webinar, but I want to pick here 2 or 3 questions. Of course, the questions have been answered during the webinar, but there are 2 or 3 points, and somebody can answer, then we balance the speakers in the end. The first one is about the countries with low connectivity and low economic capacity. Then how we can help them these countries to design plans which fit to their reality and to their context and to their constraints. That's one question. Can somebody pick this question?
Yeah, I did it. Actually, we have been working with Qualcomm. I think also Miguel can make the backup. We have a new design based on the Qualcomm 7C that was better performance on the CPU, but it's really have a connectivity built in. And this is not the premium devices. This is the local devices, and devices was now almost ready. And then we are now giving the kind of the preview to all the customers. So I think that would be one of the technology that can reduce you don't need to think about too much the infrastructure in the school, since they have the LTD built in. And then the only thing for the countries, they need to make sure the infrastructure of the 4G was ready for the last mile. Otherwise, to put a fixed network server, that was expensive. So a local devices with connectivity, I think that would be a game changers, and of course long battery life, and then I think that would be a game changers for the future.
Okay, this question was from Geoffrey Amolo. Yes.
If I could comment there as well, just on to follow on from Alex's point there about the broader connectivity and that Giga project I mentioned. I think that's an important one because they have clearly identified that one of the first things at a national level that needs to be done is mapping the level of connectivity in schools. It's a great unknown in many countries. How many schools there are? What are their GPS locations? How are they connected? If they are connected, what level of the connectivity is? So that's great work that UNICEF are doing. We're supporting them in that, and others too. And then that leads then into understanding what the demand is, and also what kind of financial demand is needed to make this connectivity breakthrough that's needed.
Yes. Last question after we will close the webinar is from Oswald Rutawiziri. I hope to say the name correctly. Is about support for learners and support for the learners and teachers. I imagine what kind of programs you have. Please, one or two programs to that. Who want to give one example? I remember, for example, Microsoft. Yes, George.
Yeah. Very quickly. We have here an internal group that we produce a lot of documentation that can be free for all. Then everything that they need from us, we will publish or we'll send the information how to deal with this kind of questions.
Okay, that's good. That said, and I tell you, we have in permanent more than 115 people in our webinar all the time. Okay, what is amazing in my point of view. Then I also want to say, after this webinar, we will send the video of the webinar. Then everybody can see the webinar or share the webinar with their friends and colleagues. And I don't want to conclude the webinar before I thank Miguel, Paul, and Jordan to be part of this webinar, and also Alex and George, who help a lot to conceptualize the webinar. But let me to also thank Sonia, Sandra, and Amanda and Rui, which is the people we don't see in the webinar, but they are really behind the webinar and make it possible. Then I want to thank everybody, and I hope to meet you in our next webinar. This was the first webinar of a series where we try to regroup the main experts from the main companies involved in remote learning and remote education to help the countries to solve the problem of provoked by the crisis, but also looking beyond the crisis and in the long term to help to change education to meet the needs of the workplace and personal lifestyles of our century. Thank you all for participating, and have a nice day, a nice evening, or a nice sleep, depend on the continent you are.
Thank you, Mario.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Bye.
Enchanté.